Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the MOCA Live podcast. It is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Max Cohen. I will be one of your hosts today. Good Julian's little smile already. Joining me as a co-host on this episode of the MOCA Live podcast, my trusty co-host, as always, Colborne Bell, founder of the Museum of Crypto Art. How are you doing, Colborne?
I am happy to be here and not at Basel.
Yeah, so am I, and hopefully so are our two guests today. These are two folks I enjoy very much, who I've gotten the pleasure to know over the last couple of years. Two incredible artists, both based in Buenos Aires, and that would be Misters Julian Brangold and Frenetic Void. Julian, Frenetic, welcome to the podcast. How are you guys?
All good here. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. We are, if anyone's watching, you can obviously tell there's four of us on the podcast today. We have an absolute smattering of colors here in our various backgrounds. So this might get a little chaotic. So let's just jump right in. So I've known you guys for some time. Colborne, you've known both of our lovely guests for quite a bit longer. We have pieces of both of yours in the Genesis collection. That would be Frenetic Super Yo, your Genesis piece on Super Rare, I believe, and then Julian Fragmented Iridescence. We've all been in each other's orbits for quite a while. But I wanted to have you on to talk about this new project that you're working on and have been exhibiting. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of a departure for both of you, like collaboratively and also stylistically. And that would be Sai Sai Coco, a collection, if you can call it a collection, of AI assisted outputs with all manner of like bizarre and horrifying. It's these somewhat adorable, somewhat human creatures, if you can even call them creatures, very surrealist, somewhat recognizable. But anyways, it's a really intricate and interesting project. And I always love to talk about AI on the show. So I'm hoping we can just get right into it. Julian, maybe you can start us off. Will you tell me how you and Frenetic kind of came to create this horrifying project?
Yeah, I like to call it more a project than a what was it you got a collection, because it's a lot of different things. It's not just a series of digital images. It's also performance art. It's IRL exhibits. It's installation. It's web-based work. It's video. It's like a really I would call it more of an art project in general. But it started when I think the very first commercially available AI tools started coming out. Frenetic and I started playing around with creating these like horrible images that were horrible in part because the tools were so rudimentary at the time. So this was like the very, very beginning of like DALI and Midjourney. These tools were super new, and they would come out with these horrible outputs. So we started. The first thing we did, kind of like together, I would say, was create these stickers for WhatsApp that were absolutely disgusting and abject, and
the sticker battle.
Yeah, it was kind of a sticker battle. So I would send one to him, he would send one to me, and we would like try to make each other laugh with these like horrible images as in the form of like WhatsApp stickers. And then Frenetic actually started overimposing this like weird language that was very intuitive, I would say, and very like playful, and just like having fun with what these characters would say, like these weird words and weird way of like writing and speaking. So that was the first thing we did together. That kind of like started this path that led us into CC Coco.
CC Coco. Okay, so I
CC Coco, yeah, that's the
already mangled the pronunciation.
no worries.
Or
And then
So, yeah, please. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No. I insist.
Yeah, and then and then Frenetic actually reached out to me with an idea for an artwork he had that kind of like, it was about something that was happening at the time. And he had this idea, and he said, "Do you want to do this together? This like one artwork, like this collaborative piece?" and we just like hopped on Discord and started working together on this. That was like the second step. I don't know, Frenetic, if you want to say a bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I was like, what the fuck was happening at that
I
time?
remember it was something shady with something shady with
but
with
but
the market.
I know. Yeah. Ah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So it's like whenever I entered Twitter or whatever, and the few times I do like consume a lot of things that are fun or ridiculous. And I had this idea of like a cow putting like tons of memes and shit back into its his her or its asshole. And I told Julian that I wanted to make this idea, and he said, "Yeah, man, of course." Like, well, seriously. And
I was
yeah,
like,
that was.
yes.
So,
uh,
it's very interesting, right? Because, I'm familiar with both of your solo work. And when I think
yeah,
about the creation of these like horrific mangled monsters, frenetic, that's kind of like your wheelhouse. Um,
yeah,
at least as we know you from kind of the crypto art world, it's a lot of these
yeah,
monstrous creations, right? And
yeah,
maybe you can start us off with this question, but like, what is it like? And I want an answer from both of you, of course, but like, what is it like suddenly adding a creative partner to what has been, from my knowledge, a crypto art history of mostly producing solo work?
yeah. I mean, for me, it's not the first time because with Game Disease also like I
Of course.
create like it was with Milton and Daro, like the trio created Game Disease, and so I had like this experience that was great. Uh, but yes, my first time creating with only one partner. Also, that's very different for trios and doubles or yeah, two persons because it's more like back and forth. And in a trio, there's like more feedback, and as there are three, there's always like perhaps it's easier to decide because it's always like two against one, you know, or it's inside. So it's easier, and now it's like back and forth, and but yeah, I mean, uh, I feel we both were like in the same path, and he was like Julian's work was also like going into this bizarre realm of memes and combining all this stuff, and so yeah, it was like an inspiration. I thought of him like when I had this idea, it was like, yeah, man, like all this shit should be interpreted by him too. So yeah, that was when I reached out.
Mm,
Yeah, for me, it is the first time that I do this kind of like bigger style project with someone. And because of the way it kind of like started and then, developed and then became a thing, I feel like
Sorry.
I wanted to do a description of what you looked like before for the people only listening, and then you just like changed it. But yeah, now
y-
frenetic is a cow. For people listening, frenetic is a cow in a field right now eating grass.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so
Whereas
it was
before
the
he was
first.
kind of a
A
two-dimensional goat.
goat. Yeah.
Yeah, and the background was kind of like split, and then you could see part of his hand. It was very weird, which is fitting for the subject. But yeah, so it kind of like developed. It started from a place of play and like having fun, and really not. It wasn't like we had this drop or this exhibition, and we said like, okay, now we have to like sit down and work together. Before we even thought about this as a project, we were already like playing around and trying to make each other laugh and making bizarre things, and like spawning weird stuff just to have fun and to explore and to see where it all could go. So I feel like it was very natural. Like at no point did I like say, okay, this is now a two
Chelo,
people project, a duo.
¿puedes ponerte auriculares?
So yeah, it was very natural. That's what I can say. Like I don't even feel like it's a thing. I don't even think about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a lot about AI throughout this podcast because all three of you are kind of at this point like prolific AI users. I mean, CC Coco for your works, Frenetic and Julian, but Colborn, I mean, I know when I look at like the outputs that you put out for 01 stuff, you've experimented a ton with AI after starting out with more like, I don't know, Photoshop graphics kind of stuff. So a lot of these questions, I'm going to kind of like roundtable them because I'm curious, like all of your various opinions. But I want to start off back to you, Julian. Like, so, for the first time, you have this collaborative partner in this more kind of expansive setting. And when you add AI into that mix, right? And I've heard AI often spoken of as much a collaborator as it is a tool. Like, did that grease the wheels, make that process of like collaborating a little bit easier to kind of have this output um, methodology that was going to create something kind of in the middle of both of your sensibilities, as opposed to having to make the choices frenetic, like you were saying?
Mm.
Yeah, I mean it's very deliberate what we do. We know what we're looking for. So after the collaborative artwork, we were on this trip together and with like a bunch of other people in this house, and we started playing with Midjourney to create the images that now are more like the proper CC Coco world, which is using the blend function of Midjourney,
Mhm.
which basically takes two images and two to five images actually, and tries to like create a synthesis of what the machine sees. And if you subvert it a little bit and play around with what you feed it, it like goes crazy and does these like very horrible things. So when we discovered that, it was like right away we started playing with it just to like turn ourselves into monsters and animals, and like we as soon as we found out that this was a possibility, it was very natural and like funny and fun to start playing with these functions to create the most like horrible, upsetting thing we could come up with, within the bounds of like Midjourney's restriction, like censorship. So I don't know that it's I don't know that I see the AI as a collaborator. I see it as a very um, effective tool. Even we used for the exhibition, for example, we used a lot of Photoshop and its AI that basically is called generative fill, where you select an area and say what you want there, and then an AI will like picture something there.
Mhm.
Um, and that made the process like so much easier to take what we were imagining to the image. So I feel like it makes it all very like instantaneous and fast, and we can play around and like move things around, but we really know what we are trying to achieve. And as the project developed, we began to become more and more selective and more like intentional, and kind of like everything became more specific, and the like vision of CC Coco started to become more clear. I don't know if Frenetic, if you agree with that.
Yeah. But yeah, to add more things, like there's was a really, yeah, natural process of trying to see ourselves also, like in this kind of mirror of like the first funny blends were ourselves too, like the one you did with your dog and other things. Like we started like we had a group with friends and started blending like every person that had like a mascot with their pet, or their pets, sorry, with their pets, and like all these outputs were really funny, and like that kind of playful thing that was from the beginning stickers, and making like trying to identify ourselves in this mirror we were creating, like was very funny. And so that's something that I really appreciate about this project, that we almost never lost the playful the playful spirit.
Yeah. You know,
I say
which is
almost,
something. Yeah, sorry, please.
no, I say almost because when you're making an exhibition or something like that, you need also like you have certain restrictions. You know, there's like structure, whatever. Before that, it was just chaos all the time. But it's also nice and good, and it fits the project. So
Sure.
sticking it to,
Well, it's interesting because I would never. I mean, your work frenetic is like, I guess, playful, but there's such a bitterness to a lot of the creations that you make. And Colborne, I'm interested from your perspective because you've kind of like developed this whole artistic practice over the last couple of months as you're creating these various artworks for 01 every day. And I wonder, rather, I am wondering, like, as you've become more, as you've gained expertise with these AI tools, how much has it felt like to you play versus entering something with a specific kind of output in mind versus like just kind of seeing what the various AI engines are going to spit out for you?
Like it's like entirely play. You have no real expectation and frankly no even modicum of control. What is interesting to me is I can't even imagine the countless hours that somebody like Frenetic spent in whatever it is, Blender or Cinema 4D or wherever uh, they create, and then suddenly be able to kind of conjure images instantly, and it come from somewhere else. So my whole thing right now is how this technology is transforming us into radical abundance. How uh, you know how like the camera created photography so that people didn't need to paint anymore, so that they had replications, and now we have just assets on demand and the ability to just produce, and what that does to visual art, and how we can own and distribute at massive scale, and everybody can begin to create.
Well, I'm going to follow up that question with another, and I'm going to ask all of you
And
guys kind of the
let me
same.
just
Yeah,
let,
please.
let me
Yeah.
add one more thing. Sorry, not to mention like having a resource like ChatGPT for saying, I want to know how to create glitch art in Photoshop, like instantly an instruction manual. I want to learn After Effects, instantly an instruction manual. It's not like YouTube videos. It's not sitting there wasting your time. It's like perfect information. So, when I am creating these things, I had no experience, no nothing, but yeah, I'm using AI, and it's fun. I find it fun.
And you're forced at a certain point to be as much of a tastemaker as you are an artist. So, and again, like I said, I'm going to ask this question to all of you guys in subtly different ways. But like Colborne, when you're discerning between outputs, right, from an AI, even if you're starting from a place of like, I know where I want this to go. Like, how do you discern
So I
what is?
never I never know where I want it to go, but I feel like I've done the taste making exercise in like curating and knowing what I like to see, and I think it's what Claire Silver said. It's qualia. This is something totally different. It's something totally new. It's going to upend everything that came before it, and this idea that crypto art was based on scarcity, I think, is about to be inverted. I'm all about radical abundance and how this is just going to usher in whole new era of creativity for kind of the globe.
Yeah, you look like much more of a madman with those glasses on, obscuring your pupils. Frenetic and Julian, I'm interested in that question too from your sides because your artistic practices to this point, I feel like have been a lot more about kind of honing in on single artworks and getting them to say exactly what you want them to say. And now you kind of have this CC Coco, and if you even go to the CC Coco Instagram page, and that's PSIKOKO on if you're looking it up at home, it's there's just so much, like you said, Colburn, the radical abundance. There's so much more of these outputs that you're putting out there. So like frenetic, I'm curious in your own practice previous to CC Coco when you were creating these monsters, right? Like how did you know you had gotten to the point where you were finished with one of those? And is it a much different process now that you're using kind of this more collaborative process and ending it with this like AI generation, like that discernment that this is done and this is saying what I want it to say?
No, for me, it's actually the same. I feel it like I have the same process. Like I feel that it's the same process. Like in the end, I like to create images, sometimes videos or whatever, yeah, imagery at the end. And it's like technology advances and there's quicker or easier or more fun ways to just express yourself. So but in the end, I guess like perhaps in a couple of years we just imagine things and things appear, and you can show them. So I think the valuable thing there is like the possibility or the creativity behind everything, but because it's, yeah, they're tools at the end, and I'm very like non. My work is kind of technical because there are very specific things, and I like to. I'm very like obsessive with putting things into place and composition or whatever. But like in the end, like, the way I interact with tools is very very like raw and playful and quick, and just try to make something and fail and just look to fail and try to break the tool, and so I don't feel like anything has changed. Just this like more imagery, faster. So I want to produce more and faster and more images, But like personally, in my line of work, it doesn't, like, I don't feel so much change. It's just like creating faster, perhaps, But that is a lot of change. But uh, I don't know, like when I always need to like feel in control of what I in the end want to show, because my work is my narrative, and I like to think I control a bit of that, and so at least that's where I decide, okay, this is finished or not. It's just something you feel when you look at the piece, or when you achieve what you wanted to what you wanted to achieve, So that's one of my favorites. That's the one that Julian put in his background.
Dude,
um,
Ju-
and
That is
Julian's
famous.
background. Yeah, Julian's background is some kind of horrible four-headed paperclip monster, which is actually a pretty good encapsulation of the kinds of things that
yeah,
CC Coco,
it's us
you know,
four, us four,
Yeah,
Us
us
four,
four
it's
it's
a
true.
perfect
There's just
representation of this group. Um,
wow.
is
I
there.
like your descriptions, Max. Like how you describe the images you're seeing. It's really cool.
that's all I'm
Um,
good for.
It looks like an elephant seal with like a middle-aged man's head, bald. So heinous.
Like trapped within a paperclip somehow.
We're
Heinous.
we're
Ugh.
we're reverse prompting, right?
yeah, exactly.
Ugh.
Um, yeah, I agree with Frenetic. I think that these are tools. They're still tools. Even what he said of like thinking of something and having the image appear will be a tool as well. So I feel like in the end, it's what I always kind of like saw art about, which is like the idea and the intention and what story you want to say. And you guys have heard me say this a thousand times. I feel that way about art. Like what matters is the story you're telling, and the fact that you have an interesting inner world or an interesting worldview that you can somehow show, and then people can, you know, can be talked to by that, and then that's it. That's what really matters. So it is true that it makes it all very different in terms of speed, in terms of the amount of iterations that you can give an idea, which only for me makes it more fun and interesting and better. I'm also working with AI in my personal work too, and it's just it lets you play way faster than, for example, Blender, which is what I used to use. And maybe still some things are not quite there yet, like video and stuff like that, but it's still just, having ideas, having something to say, and then using the right tool for that.
Well, let me hit you right back with another question, because I really like how you, and like I have heard you talk about this 1,000 times, right? The like artistry as the narrative. And I think the thing that's really interesting to me about CC Coco is that to glean the narrative, you kind of have to see everything all together. You can't just see one of these pieces and get kind of the full brunt of what you guys are experimenting with. It's all of the different iterations of these horrible disfigured creatures. And it's the various ways they can look horrifying, but also adorable and also unrecognizable while recognizable, right? You kind of have to see everything together. And I'm really interested in how AI is changing our conception of building a narrative through artistry, because I don't think it can be done just through a single piece anymore. You kind of need to show the through line, right? The artistic intention through a number of different pieces, which you have chosen to do with CC Coco. Colborn, you spoke about Claire Silver earlier. I'm not sure if Claire Silver would kind of have this aura about her if there wasn't a clear through line through all of these different outputs that she had created throughout the last couple of years or so. You kind of need to see the journey to get the sense of the artist. And so, Julian, I'm curious, like, working with a new narrative, I guess, medium, right, of having the narrative told through many, many pieces as opposed to a single one, maybe even an an unknown amount of pieces. Like, what has that been like versus trying to encapsulate it all in within one frame?
Yeah, I always kind of worked in series anyway, so it's just, Frenetic is changing shapes every couple of seconds. It's really fun. I always worked in. I like this one. He's kind of like, what do you call those animals?
A sloth.
A sloth in a forest, in a rainforest.
This was I'll stick to it.
Yeah, I like working in series, and I like telling a story that expands further than just the one image or the one experience. Even exhibitions for me are like part of a story, or even like a condensation of a longer story that was brewing, that had been brewing for a while. So I feel like it just makes sense. It just gives you, again, like more power to make more iterations, expand on other weird ideas. Like if you have an idea that you want to try on a 3D software, it'll take you like a couple days or weeks to bring it to fruition. Whereas here you can just blend or type or try something, train a model, whatever it is that you're doing, and then you can have 100 images. And then from that, you take what works and you modify it and you put it through the machine again. And I feel like it just makes this possibility of creating universes and worlds more to the hand, like more instantaneous. Like for me, Coco is a universe. We like to think about this like parallel universe where these beings live. And so how do you create a universe? Well, you depict it in like different ways, and then you invite people into this universe. And the way we did that is for example, in the IRL exhibit we had here in Buenos Aires, we created this like outside perspective and inside perspective. So we had this like huge mural that showed this very big scene full of characters, and it was this kind of like meadow or garden, and then in another part of the exhibit you had this room that was kind of the inside of one of these houses where these characters live. And all this was just made so much richer by the amount of tests and tries and things we could do with AI, and the speed. Like if we just needed like the legs for a character, we just select an area and say just fill it with the pants. And also because this project is a lot about like glitchy error or weird looking stuff, and not perfect photorealistic super realistic depictions. It like fits perfectly. Like the state of the tool now, which is kind of like still in development, works really well for this project. So it just made it all like bigger and more fun.
Yeah, Frenetic, would you agree with that? Because I mean, I think in your work there's a very clear through line to begin with. Like it's interesting looking at CC Coco versus your own work, because I don't know, the through line of your work is very well demonstrated, right? And the evolution of the creatures that you create. And I've written about how you've used like water, right, and set your various creations in these kinds of like center stages amidst these like endless kind of oceanic worlds. Like when it comes to creating a whole universe, you kind of have some experience with that. Was it easier to do so with AI? Was it like, did it open up new possibilities for the kinds of through lines that you were able to tell?
For sure, yeah, for sure. And but I think I mean, Sissy has its own complexity too, like because the narrative itself and like the characters and what they're doing and how they're depicted, and then, well, the exhibition was, well, and the piece that we exhibited in the exhibition and everything, like was done with very raw and kind of this feeling that there's no how would you say it? That there's no like so much control about like having the things needs, or I don't know how to express it so well, but like, but it's the opposite. Like we really looked for that aesthetic and that kind of yeah, finish, and so I think that's like we like there was a lot of complexity and a lot of work and a lot of time put into looking for the aesthetic itself. Although the aesthetic seems like very like uh, perhaps sloppy or or whatever, it's not. And so I think that the creation of the universe has like the same kind of thought process and work behind, but it's just like looking for a different, different, it's a different angle and a different narrative, a different message, different. So it's very fun because yeah, I'm perhaps in my personal work more used to like trying to make things or very ugly or very beautiful, and like this kind of composition or balance. But I think that Sissy has it too, like and so it's only different. So I think that the tools themselves. Well, now I'm work in my personal work. I'm working with AI too a lot, training my models and with my stuff and work, and so trying to control that as much as possible, and looking for very specific outcomes, but I think that perhaps what Sissy permitted in this stage of our personal works, I think that with Julian was in a similar state, was to experience with the tool like in a very, very playful way. I insist with this word because it really was like like that, so
Mm.
perhaps in my own personal narrative or line of work, I like have a lot of years of baggage of something specific, or I'm not, I'm not scared of changing styles or whatever, because I do that a lot, and I tend to evolve into different realms, but there's something that ties everything together,
Mm.
and so Tsitsikoko, it was like an explosion of new stuff and new possibilities and new narratives and things that really uh, I felt let loose a lot of stuff, right? Like, uh, and so that was very interesting.
Yeah, it was. I just keep laughing because of Frenetic's avatar, and just hearing the avatar be so like serious about this point,
Yeah.
and it's like this sloth with this tiny mouth in the middle. Anyway, yeah, I completely had the same thing happen to me. I was in the process of trying to incorporate more humor and more freshness and fun into my work, and then this project kind of like was perfect for that, to play and experiment and not be afraid of like, okay, is this going to fit this like grander, you know a story or storyline. It was just like this place of pure fun and laughing and having a good time. But at the same time, it's quite a serious art project. This exhibition was like 4 months in the making. um, huge space, like 6 by 6 by 3 meter mural, whole like living room. It was like a big art project, and there was a lot of attention to detail. We worked with Lulu and Jose, and it was it was a lot of work and a lot of like very deliberate decisions and quite like conscious vision, but at the same time it was all like having fun and playing and
So
laughing.
I have yet to be at like an IRL exhibition of AI work, and I'm curious, like, what was it like exhibiting the CC Coco itself, and did you two find different cultural reactions to this work that is like very kind of blatantly AI as opposed to your individual works otherwise? You guys both have the same like devious smile on your face.
Yeah, I think there, but in overall there were very good critics. I think like very good like reception to it, um, right? But you can go more into details, Julian.
um Yeah, I mean, we were kind of like uncertain what would happen because this whole world has its own like language, and everything that we communicated was in this weird language that sounded kind of like silly and not very serious. And the images clearly like just like you don't say like, okay, serious art project when you see these images firsthand. And then it's kind of like so strange, the whole like world we created, that we were uncertain about whether people would like let themselves enjoy it. um, and in the end they did, and it was incredible, and we got like people were ready to just have fun and enjoy themselves. And at no point in this exhibit there was this idea that it was an AI art exhibit.
Yeah,
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of important because it's it's the same as digital art for me. Like I think we both, like Frenetic and I, we both saw it as digital pieces and how we bring this into the physical world. I don't think that the fact that these images were created with AI really had any impact in that. It was just the same as like Frenetic had his solo exhibit, Sereno, a few months back, and I feel like the for him it was kind of like a similar thing where it was not even digital art that was like being brought into IRL spaces. It was just like this this universe of aesthetics and expressiveness, and how do I create an experience that conveys what I want to, the story I want to tell.
Hmm.
And there were like most of the exhibit, or the for me like the most, I'm talking about Frenetics exhibit, like the thing that was the strongest like moment for me was this whole like space he created, with like a sort of simulation that you could use kind of like a video game. And the whole space was so well like put together, and the whole experience was so like in the detail and curated and like thought that you didn't even think like, okay, this is digital art that then someone brought into the space. This was just like using digital tools and then a lot of physical objects and devices and stuff. It was just this like whole experience. I don't think that maybe the because it was two floors, and then you had the lower floor where there was this whole like thing, this installation, and then on the top floor he had more of his like what we could call like traditional work displayed on huge screens, and the whole space was like very well, thought to. But the lower part was kind of like the installation, like the physical, more like where the body was really asked to engage. And I feel like if you just saw the bottom part, you wouldn't say like, okay, this is a digital artist that is doing a IRL exhibit. It was just like, this is an artist creating this experience, and that's it. And I feel like that's very important.
Hmm.
Uh, Not to define ourselves as AI artists or digital artists. Even we're just like people that create experiences and want to tell stories and have people engage with them. And yeah.
Colborne, do you think that as AI is incorporated more as a tool within broader artistic practices, as opposed to being, again, like the defining feature of somebody's practice, that it will be easier to like more broadly conceptualize AI as just another art making tool, as opposed to like Julian was saying, like this encapsulative, like you are an AI artist because you use AI. Whereas I don't think people would call like, I don't know,
I
Clara
think
Volstadt a 3D artist. It would be an artist that uses 3D tools.
I think what Julian said second was more important. It's just about, I think everybody moves towards creating experience, right? I think
Mm.
AI goes just beyond art. Obviously, it goes into all mundane tasks of labor, of automation. It renders more free time unto humanity, of which people will be looking for experiences. There'll be a return to the physical, to the connection, ideally, right? So, who are going to be kind of the crafters of this magic, of these spaces, of like the avant garde, the new, what gets people excited? And it is definitely going to be the people that aren't doing it by scratch, but are using technology that assists them in building these worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Colburn, what limitations to AI have you stumbled upon so far in your, I don't know, like your 0-1 kind of, admittedly like playfully fucking around goalless
So I mean,
practice?
look, I am here for like the trash art. I'm not here for the perfect, right? That's, I don't get off on like the perfect spheres in Blender or the super sharp lines. I want the noise, I want the glitch. I need those imperfections in there, and I think that's what AI does very well. But that's also where AI is going to get some critiques. Uh, but just as Julian and Frenetic were looking for the places where the AI broke down, and ways to get it to kind of trip upon itself. That's what's interesting. Not like the perfect logic systems, but what actually breaks them, and where you can kind of find the humanity inside the machine.
Frenetic, can you be? I'd love for you to expand on what Colburn just suggested. Like, where were those points at which the machine broke down for you? Like, where were the limitations, right? The edges of AI where you realized you couldn't go any further, if at all.
Um, well, at first when I started using the more commercial, you know, uh, like Midjourney or or whatever, you can't even like process a nipple. So like it's very it's strange, you know. Like if I want to blend a nipple, I can blend it. It's ridiculous, you know. So then I started like obsessed trying to outsmart like the AI and try to get them like to make me like kind of porn images or like just display you know things that they wouldn't.
Mhm.
But I failed. Uh, and so it was like, okay, I just need like something uncensored. I was too lazy. I didn't have like too much time in that moment. I was just playing around. And then yeah, like a couple of months ago, I finished some projects and everything, and so I said, okay, now's the time, and then I started to yeah, downloading like Stable Diffusion to my computer uncensored, and then creating my own LoRa's and uh, whatever, uh, like to prove that, like to see what the fuck can you make, like trying to combine whatever, and not having like these limitations. And so yeah, there's like a kind of first barrier that you get, like if you use these tools that are like very uh yeah, I don't know how to say it, gated or whatever, or that like they have like this price point and you can blend shit on it and whatever, but they're cool because I use them also. um but yeah, like now it's at a whole different level when you can, when like it's more, you feel that you have more openness. I really hate like the limits of try like censoring images or whatever. Yeah, because like they're like, it's not that I'm trying to it's not that I focus on that, but yes, it started like censoring things that didn't have anything to do with something that you couldn't see, and it was like, this is not working so well. So that was like the first limit with this tool. But yeah, it was easily solved. And so now you know there are great things out there that require perhaps a bit more of investigation, perhaps a bit more of information. I was lucky that I know with Julian a guy here that he's a great artist and also a person that knows a lot. That's called Tomas Garcia, and so we reached out to him to, to hang out and to exchange and share information, and he really opened to us a lot of new stuff, and so that's really cool. That's now what we are doing nowadays.
Hmm.
Yeah, just to add a little bit more to that, it's also true that these tools, the more commercial tools, which are the tools that eventually people are going to use the most, because Stable Diffusion, um, uh, even what Easy is mentioning in the chat, this diff 1111, these tools are kind of like technically a bit complex for the general audience. So DALI and Midjourney are the ones that people are going to end up using the most, I think, and because
Mhm.
they're first and they have the biggest like trained models and stuff. So these tools are always kind of like very homogenizing in their outputs. Like if you just give a very simple prompt like a woman sitting in a cafe looking out the window, it will give you like a supermodel, beautiful blonde white woman sitting on this like beautiful cafe, and the whole like lighting is very cinematic, and this like very like homogeneous boring aesthetic, and you can see it in a lot of like the crypto art scene where
Yeah,
there's
standard,
a
generic. Yeah.
yeah, like there's a lot of like mid-journey aesthetic out there, and you can already tell like, okay, this was done with this tool, this was done with DALI, and it's just very boring, and it makes the aesthetic world be more homogeneous and boring, and even um, what's the word I'm looking for?
But that happens with every tool, right?
Yeah,
Because like
yeah,
I
exactly.
remember like when 3D was like, when I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, like, or more like 10 years ago, like when or 8 years ago, like Cinema 4D and like the texture packages and materials or whatever, and like they were all creating like in the same world, like they were all using the same assets, or they were all using like the same stuff, and it was like very standard.
Yeah,
That's not nothing, like it's not bad. It's just something, it's just like if you use similar materials and use it like in the same way, not trying to copy also, but just like, like taking heavy inspiration, or just using the same tools, perhaps not so creatively, like can lead you to the same result, and that's nothing bad. It's just like it's all in the same world or narrative, or perhaps there's not much new things there aside
yeah.
from technical perhaps things.
Yeah.
So things
Sorry.
are happening. No, things are happening. That's happening again now a lot. Right?
I missed the kind of 3D explosion, which I believe was mid 2021. Coldy described it once to me as like 3D bouncing balls. It was like Colburn, what you were saying, like these like really precise, really like exact spheres, and that was like the visual language of the day. Um, Julian, do you think, and maybe we can wrap up on this question, but like, do you think that the continued acceptance is the wrong word, but the continued like legitimacy within like an artistic community like crypto art of AI tools will depend on people, like you and Frenetic pushing at the limits of these things and like going deep in the trenches with the individual models and pushing back against the homogenizing influence of a Midjourney, DALI, standard uncustomizable models.
Yeah. I think so. I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but for me, art is about breaking shit, trying shit that hasn't been done before, doing weird stuff, touching the sensitive boundaries, um, and just like weirding it out and breaking stuff. And like Colby was saying, like he likes this kind of the places where things are not perfect and are not the way they're supposed to be. So as long as people, you know, as long as people still want to do that and still want to use technology as a way to see the places where things go wrong and to explore the places where things are dangerous and weird and funny and and make you uncomfortable, then I think that it's going to be all a-okay. But at the same time, I think that it's going to be this flood of like very similar looking things. Like there's this trend, or was this trend now so long ago, of like, I don't know, like 50s and 60s photography with these very clean renders from Midjourney, and I see like the whole space is completely flooded with that, which makes it also like whoever has an interesting story to tell, or like a weird project that doesn't look like everything else, stand out, which I think is not a bad thing at all. I don't know if you guys agree, or Frenetic, what you think.
Sorry, can you repeat the last part? I must laugh.
I was just saying that the people that push the boundaries and do the weird
Ah, yeah.
things and like use the tools in different ways are the ones that are going to like stand out, and that's not such a bad thing in the end, even if everything is flooded with like the same images and the same aesthetic.
Mm, I don't know. Like stand out perhaps in a long time when people like start realize, but when you're like in the moment, the one that would stand out is the one I don't know that markets his stuff or her stuff or whatever.
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, that's true.
uh, but yeah, but yeah, like in I don't know if the history of things or the global picture of people that are looking for things that are different, perhaps. Uh, yeah, I agree.
You know, I think about impressionism, as I do often, because I don't have a basis in too much art history, but impressionism a little bit. And pre-impressionism, and I'm sure art historians can correct me, and will correct me, but most of the like accepted art establishment in Europe was interested in like classical style paintings, and it was like, how close can we get to a perfect rendering of the human form in various positions, poses, etc.
Hmm.
And the market was just, the market at the time was just flooded with variations on one in, integral idea, which is like, how real can we get, how much can we honor this like classical style. And then the impressionist coup de grace was like just finding an entirely different avenue for what they were interested in painting. It was different subject matter, and it was different style. I have no idea what that looks like in AI, but it seems to me that for there to be an awareness of the boundaries that need to be pushed, there also needs to be an absolute glut of very similar looking, very unexciting, very like by the book artistry within these same kind of fields of subject matter and style, so that people can know how to break shit.
Yeah, or just get bored of it and just say like, okay, enough of this, like enough of whoever is the best like a replicator of reality then gets, you know, the awards and the praise, etc. And then it's like, what else? Like, let's do something different. People just get bored and saturated with this one way of doing things, or this one way of appreciating what's good and what is not good.
Yeah,
I think.
enough of that, and how about enough of us for the evening? I feel like we've had a really wonderful conversation. Pretty good segue, right?
That
Um,
was great.
That was
that's
amazing.
I'm getting pretty good at this. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate like all three of your insights and everything. Julian, Frenetic, why don't you guys take a couple moments apiece and tell us where we can find CC Coco stuff, where we can find your own work, what you've got going on. Julian, want to start us off? What should people know?
Sure. Yeah, I would encourage everyone to go follow CC Coco on Instagram. It's PSI PSI Coco. That's the main channel for like daily output and what we're working on currently. And then yeah, we're on Twitter. We have a website, cccoco.com. Um, so yeah, friend.
Uh, no, you said it. I don't know. That's our yeah.
All right,
That's our CC Coco. I'm not going to tell
cool.
my own Twitter.
No, yeah, yeah, we should. Then follow us, Julian Brangold and Frenetic Void. That's Frenetic with a K, VOD. Sorry, VOID. And then, yeah, then we're all set.
Cool. Yeah, go check out some CC Coco stuff and get absolutely disgusted in the best
Thanks for
possible
having
way.
us.
Colborn, any last thoughts for us before we log off?
No.
All right. A man who said his piece. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on another episode of the MOCA Live podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today or any of our other conversations, you should give us a 5-star rating, a follow, a subscribe, a like, whatever your local podcast platform allows you to give us. You should give us a follow on Substack at museumofcrypto.substack.com. We'll be back here with another MOCA podcast real soon. Julian, Frenetic, Colborn, thank you all so much for being here, and we'll see y'all again real soon sometime.
Thank you, guys.